think we will go to the next speaker, who is Valdi Steinarsdo ttir. She is a really interesting designer who is becoming an expert in biomaterials and recycled materials. And she is a product designer who graduated from the academy, Art Academy here in Iceland. And she is going to talk about a project she did with bones, where she was able to make materials from bones. But I think she has at least 2 exhibitions going on during Design March, and one of them is creating forms of clothes from mold. So she is, I think, to me, Valdis has this kind of, there's no end to where her creativity goes in terms of biomaterials. So I think she's really someone to look at in the future. And Valdis, are you there somewhere?
Yeah, thank you, Ragnar, for a beautiful introduction. And yeah, just to tell you a little bit about me, to go on what Ragnar was saying. I work here in Iceland as an independent designer, mainly focusing on material experiments and by recycling organic matter. And I'm gonna tell you a bit about a series of material experiments I've done where I explore byproducts from slaughterhouses. And the idea started when I was studying product design at the Iceland University of the Arts. I began to look at the amount of waste produced by slaughterhouses. There are a number of valuable materials that are considered byproducts that go discarded here in Iceland. And I found myself obligated to try to find ways to showcase the significance of these materials. And I found the meat processing to be both an extremely hard and morally challenging topic to explore. But that was in fact what inspired me to go further, because I think as designers, we need to be unflinching and ready to tackle uncomfortable issues. And it's kind of weird to think about how young Iceland is, how, like many people have been talking about today, but in this, it has been just, it was just a short while ago when people lived in extremely harsh conditions here, and it was hard work just staying alive, and people had to be really resourceful and sufficient. And one story I once heard that I think sums up the Icelandic mentality is that once upon a time tobacco was so scarce here that some people used it 3 times. And first they would use it as a chewing tobacco, then roll it into cigarettes, and lastly the cigarette ashes was snorted through the nose. And I think this describes the resourcefulness that people had to resort to when living in these harsh times and in a place like Iceland. But and yeah, it is because of this resilience that we are living here now. And of course, a lot has changed for the better, but our relationship with animals and animal products has changed a lot since then for most of us. People here were used to utilize everything and do everything themselves, but now we have lost the connection to full utilization. And I think it's often good to look backwards and learn from the past to move forward. And I wanted just to mention 2 of my other material researches in this series. One of them is the horsehair project. And this project is about showcasing what a beautiful material Icelandic horse hides are, and the need to utilize them here in Iceland and not to see them as a byproduct. Because in Iceland, horses get beautiful long hairs and are not factory farmed. So it's a definitely material worth exploring. And another material I've been working on is bioplastic skin, which is a biodegradable packaging for meat made out of the skin of the animal itself. And with this project, I want to reflect on society's meat consumption and the question of waste that follows it. But today I'm going to focus on just bones. And hopefully I will get the chance to tell you more about the other projects one day. But yeah, so like the name of this material indicates, just bones, this project is developed by only using animal bones to develop a strong natural biomaterial. I work with the bones in two ways. I make bone glue that works as a binder by putting the bones in a sour fruit extract and then boiling them to collect the gelatin. And then I make bone ash by heating the bones and grinding them down to a fine powder. Then I mix the two back together, and this results in a material that is similar in strength to MDF material after it has dried. And the material is liquid when mixed and can therefore be molded into any shape. And it's kind of similar to molding ceramics. But you can also work with the material after it has hardened. You can drill, saw, laser cut, etc. There are many possibilities to work with this material. And I can get various colors depending on different heating methods in the process of pulverizing the bones. I can get black, gray, and white variations. With higher heat, I get lighter color. I have mainly focused on using the black option, simply because I like the contrast of how white bones are to the black material, and it needs the lowest heat. This material is biodegradable. It is a crucial part of all my material research, because if you make a material that lasts too long, then you're only adding to the problem of an excess amount of materials that are piling up on the planet. So the material is strong for as long as you want it to be by keeping it dry, because it's not waterproof and you can dissolve it over time in water. And yeah, even though I like the idea of this material being free from my interpretation of it, I'm gonna share some examples of what I have made from it and what was my inspiration for these objects. So in this picture, you see an urn I made from the material. And I found it a symbolic usage for the project, because undeniably this project deals with death, and I found myself wanting to embrace it rather than to stray away from it. When the Nordic countries practiced paganism, graves of rich people were filled with hugfé, which were the person's most prized possessions that they wanted to take with them to their afterlife. And horses were commonly buried with their owners, and I found out that nowadays you're not allowed to be buried with your pet. So since my urns are made out of horse bones, it's a bit like a modern hugfé and a sneaky way to spend eternity with your pet. And the next thing I'm going to tell you about, I made little toy horses out of the material. And going back to what I was talking about earlier, back when we had to utilize everything we had, children used animal bones for toys. So different bones symbolized different farm animals. And for example, jaw bones were horses. And they collected the bones, and the goal was to make a big farm. And it was a custom that children had a special chest that they kept their bones in. So I decided to pay an homage to that part of our history and make a new version of a bone toy. And lastly, I am gonna tell you about the time I went and attended a wedding here in Iceland. And the bride and groom were farmers, and the food for the whole wedding came from one cow. They were really proud of this cow and took time in their wedding to have a little PowerPoint presentation to tell us about how wonderful this cow was and the prize it had won for its beauty. And to me, this was a fascinating experience. And I was inspired to start to write a book in collaboration with graphic designer Arnar Ingi Viðarsson. where I want to teach people how to make my bone material and the ritual surrounding the process. I envision that a group of people could have a big dinner party together, and from the leftover bones, next dinner could be prepared by making the dishes and cutlery from the bones. So the full utilization becomes a part of the experience. And with this candle ritual, I'm hoping to bring people closer to what they're eating, and hopefully this makes people respect their food and take more responsibility for the materials that consuming meat makes. And I think this material is more interesting in the hands of more people, rather than only me making objects out of it, because I want people to connect to materials and experience them in a way they haven't done before. And because I only make the material on a small scale, I prepare the bones myself. I find it an important part of the project because I want to stay close to the process. These raw materials are seen as a byproducts, and they all have stories, and I want to treat them with as much care and respect as we do with the parts of an animal we consider valuable. And in the future, it is my hope and belief that we will stop factory farming animals, and we will be more conscious about eating meat. But animals will still be around, and it is my belief that it's better to know how to fully utilize all natural materials that are not invasive on the planet. And it definitely has inspired me and affected me living on an island where one has to be aware of materials, or perhaps the very lack of materials. And it's important to explore discarded matter from different perspectives and find new opportunities for utilization. In this case, my aim is not to make more demand for animal products, rather to use what is already there to reduce waste and experiment with disposed materials to discover their full potential. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Valdis. I have one big burning question.
Yes.
Will you consider doing this with human bones?
Yes, I definitely want me to become a waste or whatever makes sense after I have used my body. And it becomes like a sensitive topic when we talk about using the human body. There are, like with animals, certain parts we think it's of course necessary to use, like if someone needs a heart transplant or some organ transplants. But what about if we could use the other materials that we have to further our material range? I think it's definitely something that I am open for.
It would be a beautiful ritual also for families to have objects which are derived of the core of the body, instead of burning. I don't know how you get the bones clean. It would be, we need to find new technology, but
yeah,
it's very interesting. Yeah, there's some people who ask how you can use the material for tableware if it dissolves in water.
It's kind of like a single-use tableware, I guess, because I think it's also okay for your objects not to last too long. And I see that as a positive rather than a negative.
Like the new paper cup.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but you can also shape objects which you don't, wash.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a natural material. Maybe you just can eat it with dinner.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of things still to discover, I think. It's fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Valdis. This was so